How you doing, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Going to be going through a massive buy, hold, and sell video in this one. So settling in for the long run, hence the no single. It's a bit cold here in Sydney today, so sorry in advance for not getting the guns out. But Kobe Hetherington is who we're starting off with as a clear buy for me. A few people have mentioned his previous scores. If we're going to go off a little bit of last year's, he's going to be getting bigger minutes, right? So if we look at his PPM this year, we look at his PPM last year, they're vastly different. And the other thing to think about with Kobe, if we're going to go straight off this year's scores, you've got obviously three here. You've got a 33 in 34 minutes, so pretty much a 1 ppm, a 43 in 37, so above a 1 ppm, and a 26 in 24, so just above as well. So if you basically just off those scores there, if you extrapolate that out over to like a 50 to 60 minute roll, there's a great chance he takes over Carrigan's minutes this week, whether that's 60 to 70, it could be that high, could be a 55. Their bench isn't too crash hot in terms of big minute players either. So I think that he could get somewhere close to like he's got a career PPM of 0.8. So if he's getting 60 minutes there, then you're looking at score, just under 50, which would be really, really solid. If you can get higher minutes than that, then a score over 50 would be even better. What we need to think about as well is, I was very high on him in the preseason. And the reason I wasn't because of these scores last year. Early on in the preseason, I wasn't too crash hot on him. We have we have a bunch of games at him at lock there, 30-minute games, 50-minute games, and he scored okay, right? He's missing a few tackles. He's obviously, cleaned that up a little bit too. If you look at his, he's only missed 1 tackle in 3 games. There's a few things to look at there. But my main point here is that, in the trials as well is when that really changed for me. He was scoring, he was getting big minutes. He had to hit a score of 50 in the trials. And that was just all through base. And I think that if you're looking at, Hetherington or Cotter, you get Hetherington for 100k cheaper. His break-even's low at 24. He's, priced really low as well. So if you can get anywhere close to a 45 or 50 average, he's got 200 to 300k to make. And that's massive. There's not many people that can, that you could bring in at the moment that could make that kind of cash. He's dual position. He's not going to break the bank. He's owned by 5.5% of teams at the moment. I expect that to rise a fair bit, and Kobe to be in a lot more teams. And yes, I understand that his PPM wasn't as incredible in the back end of last year when he got all those opportunities. But I think he's, being a player who's second year, he got a fair bit of a crack last year. He wasn't missing too many tackles, but 2 a game was kind of his standard. He's a bit more of a workhorse this year, you can see, with the 34 and 37 minutes. In his 50-plus minute games, he was getting around the same tackles, right? And, his meters gained has been up as well. So yes, I understand if he's going to be playing 50 to 60 minutes, he might slow that down a little bit. But if you, extrapolate it out over that minutes, you're probably going to get a 0.8 to 0.9 kind of PPM and do really well. So that's why I'm high on Kobe. I understand why you might not be, but, that's just, my opinion. You can go along with that as well. So please subscribe, guys, if you're new. That would be great. All right. Talatau Gola is how I'm meant to say it, I've been told. Thank you for the help, guys. But centre and the wing fullback duel at 220k. Owned by a big percentage of teams. He was actually owned by a big percentage in round 1 when he got that interchange game. So he's got a 2 in there and he's got a 32 now. So his break even's still not super low. So he's not someone that you need to get in right this second. But he's been named a fullback position. There's very, very, very high chance that he's going to be moved to the centre or the wing. I think Garrick should be playing 1. Gola, when he went and played in reserve grade, he didn't even play at fullback either. So I don't think that he's going to. I don't think he's going to get that position. I think there's going to be a shuffle. It's pretty easy just to go, all right, Trebojevic, you're out. Pop Gula in there, and then they can change it on game day. So just be aware that he might play centre again. He did have a try assist. He had a line break assist. He had 3 tackle breaks and offload. He did have a couple errors, but good meters as well. So will he be able to do that again? I don't think he's going to get like a 50 to 60 this week, right? They come up against a decent side in the night. So maybe against the Titans, he'd be able to get a better score. So I think you can, if you're trying to get Cleary in, you could downgrade to him and go up to a Cleary. But if you're just looking to trade him in for the sake of it, or you think he's going to do really well, I don't think so. I think you can get a better score out of someone like Kobe. We'll speak about a few other guys going forward, but I think not a complete priority. He might make 20, 30k if he absolutely kills it, but he could get a 20 or 30 or a 15 as well, and then be like, oh, maybe we don't have to pick him up straight away. But the coverage there in the center wing fullback, if you're trading someone like Amiso out, then bringing in Gula would be a great option straight up off the bat. So he's in there. Definitely not much downside with guy at 220k, that's for sure, who's going to be getting the spot for like 4 weeks at least. And then potentially if he plays well, could keep the spot. Not Tom's, but the one of the centre boys, whether it's Harper or Parker there. Okay, Taylor May. So I think this is the last opportunity to get him. He has a negative break even still. They come up against the Dogs. But you look at their run here and it's like, oh wow, how do you not pick him up? Like to sit there and not own him when he plays against Canterbury and then the Broncos and Raiders and Titans there, that 4-game stretch, which then he'll probably lose his spot to and then they've got Para, Melbourne and Roosters over the next 3. And then over that Origin period, he should be playing some games. You've got the Cowboys, the Dogs again. So there's a bunch of good opportunities for him to score well over the next few weeks anyway, until To'o comes back. So it looks like round 8 approximately for him. So you're going to get round 5, 6, 7 at least, which if he if he can score a try a game, let's say, and average 40 over the next bunch, and he should be around 550k. That 40 average over the next 3 will get his rolling average to just under 50 there, and he'll be at least 550k. So I think Taylor, it's the last chance to get him. If you want, you don't want to pick him up at like 460k. It's a little bit too much. But 403 we can cop at this point. Just get him in. You should be able to play him this week against the Dogs in the centre position. He's going to need dual position eventually. He'll play over the Origin period, so I think you can hold him through that. Use him as a bit of a red dot over that next period, and if you have saved a lot of trades, and when he gets traded out, you could possibly take him out of your side if you'd like to, and use that cash generation you've got, and potentially bring him back in later if you wanted to. But yeah, Talon, a great option, has had 3 games in first grade, 1 without a try, 42, and then a couple of tries in the last few. He's just a really, really solid player, and you're seeing he got one on, he got through 2 defenders in one of those tries, which showed that he has some talent and would be a great option for your side. A guy I suggest as a buy, and I've suggested as a buy since the preseason, and thanks for recognizing that, guys, is Dylan Brown. So he was at 2.6% ownership until this week. He's at 3.8 now, slowly getting out of pod range. 29% of the top 100 own him, which is very interesting. 18% of the top 1,000, so 180 coaches there, which is cool. He's a 740k, break even 11. He'll probably get up to about the 760, 770. But just be aware with Dill, he is someone that over the years generally averages around the 50, just above. This year he's getting a few more attacking stats. He's obviously got a couple of tries this year. Sorry, 1 try in round 4 there, but a couple, plenty of try assists in each game. And so this means, will he do this every week? I don't think so. He's obviously improved a lot, but I'm expecting him to average about 55. So picking him up now, you're chasing points a little bit with a 59, 83, and 85. I think 59 or somewhere around the, if you take off the try assist, for example, then he's somewhere around the 52 mark. So I think scores in the mid-50s will be cool. He'll probably hold price. He doesn't pay Origin, so he's obviously going to be a great buy. I'm going to tell you not to get him because I want him to stay as a pod, but reverse psychology it, and you can potentially pick him up there. But he just does everything across the park. The thoughts pre-season was that he'd add some attacking stats, which he didn't have last year. 3rd-year player. He's done that so far, and he'll continue to do that. Another guy that I wouldn't say is a screaming buy, people ask, is Kurt Mann a must-have? He's not. He's at 572k. He's averaging 50. He's got a bit more cash to make for sure. Half mid dual. Got 80 minutes on the weekend. So if he continues to get that, he'll clearly average 50. If he gets closer to the 60 minutes, then there'll be a 45 point game in there and stuff like that. So we're not exactly sure if he's going to get 80 minutes going forward. Because Randall played 80 as well last week. There's been a lot happening in their squad. So once we get a real normal week, once they get all their forwards back, we'll know exactly what's going to be happening with him. But I think if you own him, you're holding him. If you don't own him, he's not a must buy because he's gained a fair bit of cash at the moment. There's probably other guys there's other cheaper guys that you can pick up that's going to make some more money than what Kurt would and score just below or similar, which will be able to get you closer to like a Cleary, for example. So Kurt Mann, great option, but not a must have. Isaiah Papali'i. I just want to speak about him. If you want people asking about him, I'm starting to speak about him more. He's someone that getting closer to Origin, I think, is definitely a really important option for anyone's side. We thought he'd lose a little bit of cash. I just didn't think he'd be able to average 62 for the year, maybe about the 55 mark. But you're saying that like the tackle bust that he's getting, still missing a bunch of tackles and stuff, but offloading, making big run meters and big tackle counts is showing that he can. Even in a 65-minute effort, he can get 56. And when he plays 80, you're very clearly around that 55 to 60 with some upside if he can potentially get a line break or a try. So he hasn't even scored any tries yet and still averaging 62, which shows that he's going to be super important. That dual position, the price is really high, obviously, but he's very similar to the Murray mold, where he's just going to get great points every week. And he's someone that if you wanted to, if you already have Cleary and you're looking for a mid or an edge gun, then Ice Paps, Isaiah Papali'i, would be a good option for you to pick up in your side. Just wanted to mention that over the last obviously year and 4 games now, he's been super consistent, and he will continue to do that. He's very much a focal point for the Eels attack, and just is a big workhorse as well. Won't play Origin, so another great option similar to that of Dylan Brown. Andrew Davies, another small time buy, break even at 5s, 275k. Looks like Schuster's probably going to be somewhere around the round 7 to 8. Could be the question. So if you bring in Davey, it's probably a 2 to 3 round option at 275. You'd probably go Gula over Davey, I think, just for the 55k cheaper. The 37 that he got on the weekend with 80 minutes was solid. I think there's definitely some more upside on that. He'll make a bit of cash over the next few weeks, but I just want to put him in there as a potential buy, but closer to just a hold over the next few weeks. I'm personally not going to go for him, so take that as you will. But yeah, Davey's gonna do okay for sure. All right, we get to the hold section now, guys, and Kelma Tuolangi is someone that I think is definitely a hold, just for the fact that the break even's low. He has had a little bit of an unlucky start. He got 51 minutes in a bit of an average game against the Knights when they got beat up. You got the Titans game where he was pumping it. He was 25 points through that half. He had 3 missed tackles, unfortunately, and a penalty conceded, so -8. And his work ethic was great with the 25 tackles. So if he can get somewhere close to the 80 minutes, whether it be 70, 65, even if he could get the 80, I'm expecting some scores around the 40 mark for him. And I think that's pretty fair to expect out of Kelma, that he'll be able to get somewhere near that mark and make us some cash. Like, he's still owned by a very high percent, like 17% overall, but in the top 5,000, it's 68% of coaches and 58 out of the top 100. So if he continues to make money, I think he missed out a little bit. I can see him getting to about the 450k mark. So there's 120k in there. He's not someone that's taking up too much cap with what he's, unfortunately with what's happening with him. He's obviously not performing incredibly well in terms of the scores, but to the eye, he's clearly their best player apart from Jackson Hastings. So, and Lucy Leather, for example. So I think that you can definitely hold him. There's other guys you could trade out in that mid-range, for example, that I think, Jack Birds and stuff, which we'll speak about. You got Hemiso, you got Tom Trbojevic. There's a lot of other guys to remove. Bully more if you haven't done so yet before I'd get rid of Tui. All right, so we move to Walters, and I don't think he's a screaming buy this week either. We got 24% of people own him, 52 in the top 100, 52 in the top 5,000. I just think that after what we saw last week, he played 60 minutes in the 6 role, and we just need to see what happens next to Reynolds. How is he going to play? Is he going to score closer to what he did in the 55 in round 1? He obviously didn't kick at all last round, which obviously wouldn't have been in the game plan anyway, but 120 kick meters in the first one was what you'd expect next to Kelly. Even though Kelly had big kick meters that game, next to Reynolds, I doubt that Walters is going to kick much at all, unless they game plan slightly different this week with him getting that exact starting role. I'll have a chat in my next video about potential guys. A lot of people asking me about who do I play in my bench and my reserves this week, so I'll make a video around that and explain that further. But I just don't think that Walters is a buy. There's a chance that he could get 25 every week. There's a chance that he can get 40, and I just think there's too much of a risk for him to get 25 a week with a break even of 27 for him to be a buy this week. And he's not gonna, if he does well, right, he's gonna get the team. He's gonna be in the team for a while, and you could potentially buy him at 350 next week. Even if he gets a 30, 35, he's only gonna be a little bit above where he's at now. So I think you can hold off and don't worry about bring him in. And if you own him, he's definitely a hold. So that's that with Walters. Matty Burton, I think, is definitely a hold as well. The news of Kyle Flanagan coming into the side at number 7 poses a little bit of a risk to some of his kick meters, for example. And they obviously come up against a couple of strong teams. We've got the Penrith Panthers, we've got the Bunnies, and the Roosters in the next 3 or 4. Obviously, Broncos in there. I can understand. If you want to move him to Cleary, I can understand it. Cleary comes up against the Dogs and could get 100 this week, whereas Burton you'd probably be expecting against Panthers somewhere around the 40 mark again. So I can understand that he's only had that one good game, and that was against the Broncos in a pretty tight tussle, where he did get the line break and the line break assist and a lot more running meters. So if you look at the games against the better teams, he's got 50 and 58 meters. So will that continue? I think there's a decent chance that it will. And if you let's play it this way. If you've only used like 3 trades this week so far, if you're at 29 and you wanted to go him to Cleary and downgrade someone else, then I think that's okay. But if you've used a bunch of trades, and I think wasting a trade on Burton now, when you're going to want him come closer to Origin, he's not going to play the Origin period. And then he's got, Broncos in 3 weeks. He's got Canberra. He's got a Tigers, a Dragons in there as well. Penrith over the Origin period and Para. That'd be right. So we got round 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So yeah, Penrith in that first bye, if they're playing. I can't remember exactly. We'll check that. But Para in that period as well. You got Tigers in there as well. So I think that you're going to want him eventually. The team's going to get better. Do you want to move him on now? That's going to be the question. Up to you. He's going to be a gun. Like, he's going to be a keeper in the centers. He's averaging 44.8 and hasn't lost any money. So that's that. Jai Arrow, another guy people are speaking about potentially moving on, and I can understand why. I think over the next bunch of weeks, he's probably one to move on, but 59% of the teams own him in the top 100. Will that be less this week? I'd say in the next few weeks it would be. He's averaging 50, guys. Like, he's made a fair bit of cash already. 64 in round 1, a 45, a 50, and a 41. So obviously the big minutes in those first 2 was, obviously better to look at, to be honest, but that was playing more time on an edge and then moving to the middle. And then since then, the last game, he played his second stint in the centers, which was annoying. So I'd like for him to get back to his normal rotation where he can get back to close to that 50 score. I'd personally like for him to get over 30 tackles. The running's been great. Obviously, less running in the centers last week. So I think he can bounce back closer to a 45-50 next week, or this week coming. So I don't think he's an urgent sell. The dual position's great as well. We're obviously going to move him on before Origin, but you don't have to do that right now. I think you can wait a little bit longer with Arrow. But if you're looking to get him up to Cleary or something like that, I just wouldn't be sideways trading him, or I wouldn't trade an Arrow to a Kobe Hetherington or something at this point. You could wait a week or two on that trade. And see what happens, because there's going to be injuries. You could get someone else get injured, and you're like, okay, I'll move them on to Kobe. I'll move them on to Gula or something like that. There's some options for you in your sides there. Just think of that. Same with you and Aiken. He's averaging 46, has made a bit of cash as well, and is owned by a high percentage of teams in the top 100, top 5,000, up at 82% and 72% respectively. So a 39 break even. You're not going to start losing money on him yet. He's had 0 attacking stats apart from that 1 try, which was just a quick put down. 5 tackle breaks for him is pretty low when you look at his tackle breaks in previous seasons. The back end of last year when he played second row, he had 4, 4, 6, 6 in that last full game. He had a few tries, which he hasn't had at all yet, really. Meters have been pretty low. So, obviously the 40, 45, and 42 is a little bit annoying. But if you can get those tackles up and a couple of random attacking stats, then you're going to get above that 40 and up, closer to the 50s and 60 marks. And if he gets a 55 next week, you're like, oh, I should have kept him. You know what I mean? He's a keeper in the centers. He's averaging higher than Burton. So I think you definitely hold him. Yes, he's had that one really good game, 56, but he hasn't fallen below 40, which is, what you could ask for with any guys in the mid-range. They just don't get that 20 on you and kill you in there as well. So that's that there. Actually, next one I want to talk about is Sexton, which I forgot to put in this list, but he comes in at a 619k and a 44 average. So again, similar to these guys in this position, a 45, a 61, and a 44 is nothing to sneeze at over those first 3 games. If you look into the next bunch, they obviously have a little bit of a tough run in Para and Manly. Cowboys will be a better one, but Penrith and also Roosters. So if the Titans continue to struggle, then he'll probably struggle a little bit as well. The 25 that he got this past round, I don't think will happen again. The kick meters was down massively. So I just think it was a very random game. It was a very bad game of footy. So I think you can give him an opportunity to bounce back. But if you wanted to move him on to a Cleary, for example, then I can understand why. I just think he's worth a potential chance at 1 more. He's owned by 9 of the top 100 teams. So 12% of the top 5,000. So I think you can definitely hold off on him at this point. I spoke about Clifford as well. I'll just quickly talk about him before I move on as well. At 602k, very similar situation, but averaging 47.5. And he's made cash. And if you started with him, I think he's definitely a hold. He's had 2 average ones, obviously, but they've had a really tough run of it the last couple of games. And if they start to play a bit better, they're up against obviously the Manly boys this week. And then you got the Dragons. So if you can get through to that Dragons one and he doesn't score well there, then I think you can potentially move him on. For Cleary, or you can go somewhere around that point. But he scored really well in the first 2 games. He did have 2 tries in that, so just be aware of that. That probably scores around the 55 and the 48. So a bit less, 45 maybe. So 36 and 37. That's with a bunch of missed tackles last game. No attacking stats, no goals last game. So I definitely think there's some room for improvement if he runs the ball a little bit more and gets more involved like he was in the preseason and also those first couple of games. So I think that he's worth a hold. A 602k, 44 break even. You're not really going to lose money on him. Has that a potential upside? I think you can hold a cliff. All right, Fafita. He's on the edge of hold or sell for me. A 65 break even. We know what he can do, right? Let's look at 2021. He hasn't scored any tries yet. So if he can just bust out a try or two, then he has a 90 in him. He has 100 in him. There's a couple there last year, a bunch of 70s, 100 at the end of the year. So if he can, if you hold on to him and he gets an 80, you're laughing, right? He gets a 90, 100. You jump ahead a lot of teams, right? In the top 5,000, there's 12.7 that have him. So that's what? It's about 700 teams have him, right? In the top 5,000, for example. So if he does well, you're gonna dominate as also. But if you look at his scores, 42, 44, 47, 51. It's not like if he scores somewhere in there, it's not like he kills you. It's not like he's getting a 20 and he's really hemorrhaging cash and he's absolutely smashing your team. Like I own Reed, for example, and I'm still ranked 1100. So if you're getting other things right in your team, it's almost worth giving Fafita another crack. If you have trades or guys that you think that, so they put it this way: if you've got 2 guys, right, if you're looking to get rid of an Arrow and a Fafita, or a Jack Bird and a Fafita, let's go Jack Bird and Fafita because I think Bird's more of a sell. Bird has less upside. Right, so if you can only trade 1 this week, I'd move Bird on unless you need completely need the extra cash, for example, 160k. I'd move Bird on first because you could hold that you can hold Fafita for 1 more week, and if he gets 40 odd, he doesn't kill you. Bird can get 35, right? Similar to my situation with Bird and Reed last week. Reed could go nuts, but Fafita has more chance of going bananas and scoring you really well. So then you can hold him for that week and potentially move Bird on first, and then if Fafita goes bad again, you lose 15, 20k, whatever it is, and then you can move him on as well. So that's my theory with Fafita. He hasn't gone well so far. Coming up against a decent team, he has to have a game where he scores a try, doesn't he? I feel like he'd be itching, white line fever for Fafita there. So that's that with him. We got 4 more to go, so we're going to move on to the clear sells now. And Reed's lost 80k now. He's still owned by a decent percentage of people, 8% of the top 5,000. But it's time for him to go. He just, he scored 2 tries now, and he's got a high score of 51. The tackles aren't completely there, and 4 missed tackles a game is not good enough. Run meters aren't there. He's kicked a 40-20 last week and still get 44 with 40 tackles. It's just not up to scratch. He's just not playing as well fantasy-wise as he was at the back end of last year. They're probably using him a little bit more like they did Cook last year with the Rabbitohs, getting the halves early ball, which they're both playing really well. You've got Nathan Brown as a bit of a distributor and running the ball through the middle. You've got Isaiah Papali'i, you got Sean Lane or Madison on the edges. They've got a lot of talent, so he's just distributing nicely. He's passing the ball out in front. He's been doing really well as a hooker, but in fantasy, he's just not good enough. And at that price point, you can do better at this stage. So he's a trade. I'm trading him out this week. There's a bunch of cheaper options. You could use him to go up to Cleary. There's a few things to do, but just based on what your team needs and go from there. Jack Bird, I spoke about. I think he's just 42.5. You're holding Aitken, you're holding Arrow, you're holding Burton over Jack Bird. I think a little bit cheaper price, but just he scored 3 tries and he hasn't scored over 47. That's a sell. Not good enough. There's going to be games where he doesn't score tries and he's going to get a 28. He's going to get 35. He's just missing too many tackles. The last 2 weeks, especially a 5 and an 8. The run meters aren't anywhere near where they need to be. Tackles aren't super high. He's never been that type of player, so just annoying. Yeah, I think it's time. Use him, downgrade him, upgrade him, get closer to Cleary, get a cheapie that's making money. I think it's time to move on from Jack Bird. All right, last 2 are injury guys. So Hamiso, 455k. Use his money. Obviously most people don't have wing fullback cover, so trade him down to a Gula, move him up to one of the guns, a Paps, a Hines if you don't have him. God forbid you don't have him. You got Teddy, you got those kind of guys there. I think are good options. Taylor May if you don't need the cover at this point and might need it eventually. They're all guys to go for. It's just too expensive and out for too long, unfortunately, and not going to be a gun anyway. And then Trbojevic, unfortunately, 4 to 8 weeks he'll be out for. Unfortunately, you've lost a lot of money, but just move him on. Unfortunately, it looks like that was 2020. Tommy Turbo will miss 8 weeks. It might be again 2 years later. So not scoring well enough. Move him on to Cleary. Move him on to one of the gun fullbacks. I think that's fine. Actually, the other one to speak about, which we forgot to add in this video, is going to be Calen Ponga at 572k. I think this, it's a very tough one. I think if you hold on to him, a 62 break even, if he scores somewhere in the 20s or 30s, then that could be scary. He obviously got a 50 in round 1, and we know what he can do. When he plays 80 minutes, he generally scores 40 plus as a bit of a base, and obviously that's 6 this last week was not good enough. A bunch of errors there. The missed tackles wasn't really happening for him. Didn't run the ball enough, so he'll obviously improve. They've got a few tough games coming up. If you don't like having him there, if you haven't got like a Paps or a Hines or a Teddy or something like that, then you can move him on for that. If not, you can downgrade it. If you want to go him to Gula and then up to Cleary or something, then you can do that as well. But anyway, guys, that's enough for this video. A nice long one. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope it answered the majority of your questions around the buy holds and the sells. And if you have any other questions, please check the other videos that I've popped out first. I should have answered the majority of them. As I said, in my next video, I'm going to pop in who you should be playing in your 17. That sort of that 14 to 20 and sorry, the 14 to 21, and how you can manipulate that and score really well, or pick that. But a lot of times it's going to be matchup based. I'm personally not too great at picking that, so I'm good at selecting a guy across the whole season. But that daily, the one game stuff is very hit and miss. It's all, a lot of it's around luck. So that's that, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. We will catch you in the next video. Have a great day.